All right, very good. So for you out in video land, let it be known that we are continuing with our reading and discussion of Canto 20 and the Inferno, and that this has to do with the diviners, fortune tellers, that sort of thing. We got as far as line 100 last time. So our strategy today is going to be to read from 100 to the end of the canto as a continuum. And then we will go back and read small parts of it and discuss what we're reading. And should we, by any chance, complete this canto today, we will continue on to canto 21.
Yeah.
That being said, let me go make sure I know the reading order here. Oh, oh. Dave, am I the first reader?
No. This is our man from Minnesota.
A man from Minnesota.
Same
Okay,
home
because I
state
don't.
as the next vice president. That's our guy.
I think you're
Oh,
last this time.
oh, I see. Yes, from the home of the next vice president. Then Cleveland John. Then okay, got it.
At
Got
least
it.
he didn't associate me with J.D. Vance.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, yes. Yes, I have a feeling that as months go on, you will be increasingly happy about that lack of association. Okay. Well, our representative from Minnesota, home of the next vice president,
Okay.
will begin the reading.
Okay, may I be so worthy. Okay. And I, my master, thy discourses are to me so certain, and so take my faith, that unto me the rest would be spent coals. But tell me of the people who are passing, if any one noteworthy thou beholdest, for only unto that my mind reverts. Then said he to me, he who from the cheek thrusts out his beard upon his swarthy shoulders was at the time when Greece was void of males, so that there scarce remained one in the cradle, an augur, and with Calchas gave the moment in Aulis, when to sever the first cable. Ariphilas his name was, and so sings my lofty tragedy in some part or other. Thou knowest that well, who knowest the whole of it. So I'll pass this to Cleveland John, please.
The next, who is so slender in the flanks, was Michael Scott, who of a verity of magical illusions knew the game. Behold Guido Bonatti, behold Osdente, who now unto his leather and his thread would fain have stuck, but he too late repents. Behold the wretched ones who left the needle, the spool and rock, and made them fortune tellers. They wrought their magic spells with herb and image. Next.
But come now, for Cain with his horns already stands above the border of both hemispheres and touches the waves below Seville. And recall 2 nights ago, the moon already full, did you no harm at any time in the deep wood. These were his words while we were moving on. Duncan, you want to start reading the individual tercets? Or who's
Okay.
next?
Yes,
Dave,
we'll
I
start
think
reading.
Dave is next.
I am. Okay, I'll read. Yes. Okay.
Do we want to discuss this before we move on? Or do we want to just go through these readings one at a time?
Whatever the group wants.
Well, we've read through to the end here, and we started at 101. So, do we want to start again at 101 individual paragraphs and see if there's anything that needs discussion?
You know what? Why don't I? I'll just I'll do the first half kind of thing. Master, for me thy teaching is so true, and so compels belief all the tales, said I, were dust and ash compared thereunto. But tell me of this great crowd that yonder trails, if any worthy of note be now in sight. My mind harks back to that before all else. He answered, He whose chin beard shows so white on his brown shoulders was a memorable augur in Greece. What time the land was quite emptied of males, so that you'd scarce be able to find a cradling boy. He set the time with Calchas for the cutting of the first cable. Eurypylus his name, and my sublime tragedy sings him somewhere. Thou'lt recall the place that has by heart the whole long rhyme.
Okay. Very good. So I think we need to, got a couple of references in here we need to figure out.
Mhm.
Well, can I make a broader comment? We just go, he starts these lines with, whatever you say, master, I'm absolutely with you. But then Dante in the preceding paragraphs has basically told Virgil, forget how you told the story of the Aeneid. From now on, you're going to tell it this way.
Hey, interesting. Right.
So repeat what you said there, Lois. I didn't quite
What-
follow.
Starting in line 101,
Yeah.
the pilgrim is saying, whatever you say, master, you're the best. I'll do whatever you tell me.
Yeah.
But the paragraphs we finished with last week were where Dante, as the poet, is retelling the story of the Aeneid in a way that's different from how Virgil had told it.
Oh,
So
okay.
in 101, he's saying, I'll do whatever you say. But he's
Yeah.
just repeated that by saying you're all wrong on what you said before.
Oh, okay. I guess I didn't
About
get that
Manto.
discussion last week, but that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, he did correct him, didn't he, in some places here? But,
And I haven't read the Aeneid. In the establishment of Mantua, or set up by
yeah.
Virgil, was there divination involved in that? Was there something supernatural or sorcerers or something?
I don't think so. But it was it was founded by her son.
Yeah,
Right.
instead of by Manto. Yeah. I just thought that divination could be part of that story. Because I have a note here. This is Hollander. Virgil now gets Dante to swear that he will regard only the current version of the history as truthful, and that he will not consider any other version, that is, the Roman poet's own version, as nothing but a lie. The protagonist dutifully assents. Thus is, and this is what my question is here, thus is Virgil made to remove the stain of divination from his poem and from himself.
Could you read the last sentence again, please?
Thus, Virgil is made to remove the stain of divination from his poem and from himself. The result is eventually quite different from what the tactic might have been intended to secure. That is, Virgil's poem is seen as precisely as associated with this fault of divination.
that puts quite a lot of things in a whole different light here.
I know. But I'm just throwing this out.
Why these people are in this thing, and even by the way, he's retelling this.
And again, Hollander could be nuts, but when I was reviewing this over the weekend, I said I had seen that he was making him change the story, but I hadn't seen what that really meant in terms of the sin of divination.
Well, you'd have to know, I guess, the Aeneid.
We got to go and read the Aeneid again, but I haven't read it yet.
So, Lois, can you give me a canto and a line number where that occurs? I'm searching fruitlessly for it.
Yeah, okay. But tell me, then he replied, I charge you, let's try 97. I charge you, therefore, should you ever hear of my city's origin described another way, allow no lie to falsify the truth. And the only place that we know that it's described another way is in Virgil's own poem.
Okay.
So that's 97 through 99.
Yep, got it. Right, where we just finished off.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
No, it seems to me that let's see, going back to that that 97 up to 99 was Virgil being stating there, and I'm looking back to see where he has a longer tale about that. It seems, and I can't remember, I can't see in my translation where he begins that thing.
Oh, this is Virgil speaking, but it's Virgil speaking as Dante makes him speak.
Okay,
Because Dante is the
Okay,
poet.
okay, I see. Okay, yes, thank you. That makes sense. Okay.
okay. But I think the point is, I guess I just want to say that quote on 97 to begins at 97 is really the end of a much longer quote.
Yes.
He is where that is Virgil, as Dante is making him say it, that talks about, has this whole story of the founding of Mantua, which is Virgil's hometown. Isn't that right?
Mhm.
Yes,
so
but he's telling a different story. He's telling
telling
it
a
as
different
founded by
story.
Manto, not by Manto's son.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, I think that goes all the way back to where he tells, "Art thou two of the other fools?" He calls Dante something, saying giving him some background about these diviners.
Yeah, it's not a big deal in the Aeneid. There's at one point when after Aeneas lands in Italy, essentially there's a war uh, between some of the native populations and the Trojans, and the Trojans get other allies as well. And there's a catalog of who's fighting with whom, and Manto's son brings a unit to fight on Aeneas's side, and it's mentioned in there that he had founded Mantua after his mother, but it's only a few lines.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
Okay.
But he does it again right after the lines we just looked at, because he distorts or he introduces something that's not in the Aeneid.
Okay. Yeah.
Because Eurypylus had nothing to do with the prophecies at Aulis when the Greeks were setting out for the Trojan War. Eurypylus is not mentioned in that context by Aeneas or by Virgil. He's mentioned at the point where the Greeks are trying to get the Trojans to lead the Trojan horse into the city. They send this character named Sinon, and he has this elaborate lie about the Greeks have given up and they wanted to go home. And they sent Eurypylus to consult the oracle. And he came back and he said, just as we had to shed blood at Aulis to launch the expedition, we have to shed blood now to return home safely. So, and he's linked with Calchas in that episode. But again, Dante has either misread or willfully distorted Virgil here.
Well, I guess in a way, to me, harkens or it raises a question of how, why that is Dante seems to make a point of these soothsayers, as Longfellow calls them, or diviners, makes a point of putting them in this part of hell and has such a long explanation or disquisition about all this. Well, all these are taken, well, unless maybe this is all his way of rephrasing all this ancient, the poem he admires so much into kind of his own language here at the time, and into his own to the lens of his own faith and so forth.
Well, the topic is diviners, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Soothsayers and that.
And the essence of a diviner is to see the future before the future happens,
Right.
to divine the future. And the sin of the diviner, as I understand it, is that they actually can't do that. So everything they're making up is a falsehood.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it really depends upon whether we're looking at Virgil as a describer of history,
Mm.
as opposed to a predictor of what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think the essence of the idea is that only God knows the future.
Right.
So
And
then,
every
sorry.
other attempt to know the future before the future happens is false,
Mm.
or at least blasphemous.
Yeah.
So if we use that as our rationale, is that why the most famous soothsayer of antiquity is missing? Cassandra, because I defer to you, John from Cleveland, but my understanding is her gift was she could accurately prophesy the future. Her curse was nobody believed her.
Exactly, yes.
So, Duncan, if we're talking about false soothsayers, she wouldn't be one because what she said actually happened. And I'm wondering if that is the case, maybe that's why she is notable by her absence here.
Um,
I don't know why she's absent.
Right, because the point is, John, if Dante's got it in for soothsayers in general, she should be here. If he's got it in for soothsayers who spout falsehoods, then she is justly not there.
Mhm.
Well, then that also supposes in a way that that Dante's drawing a distinction between soothsayers that tell the true prophesies or
Right.
not. And I mean, that seems like what Duncan says is interprets as saying, well, soothsayers inherently they're false tellers of falsehoods because nobody can tell the future. So Cassandra would be in that category anyways, because she couldn't tell the future, and nobody believed her because she couldn't tell the future anyhow. So, and they knew it. So
that seems to be the sin of what the sin of a diviner is. That the diviner is usurping the powers of God. You know,
Yeah.
as opposed to not really a soothsayer, but someone like Joseph,
yeah,
who did divine dreams, but he only divined dreams under the instruction of God himself.
Yeah, okay.
You know, here again, just as with the blasphemers, he reaches back into pre-Christian times to get his sinners. Now we're going to get a few Christian ones coming up, a few names here.
yeah.
But with the blasphemers and with the soothsayers, he kind of takes an easy way out, going with non-Christians or pre-Christians.
Well, non-Christians who maybe only have existences in mythology,
Mhm.
which I suppose he knew that, but I don't know. I'm reminded, I'm not a, I've read parts of the City of God by Augustine, and I know
Mhm.
Augustine does not. Augustine does he does talk quite a bit about the ancient gods and mythology, myths, and so forth. At least the gods, I think, and he says he describes them all as being actual devils. And so, and in his cosmology, devils, demons are as real as angels, or angels and devils. They're there. And so he just puts them, he just classifies them into, part of the legions of Satan. And I just wonder if maybe this is what, to some extent, Dante is doing here too, is that these myths are based upon some kind of real history for him, and that it's just the same as if somebody was recounting something that we would talk about as an actual events and historical events. So, and we talk, I suppose, to some extent. Some people say, like the Bible, there's no like archaeological foundation. I've heard that Solomon or David or these ancient kingdoms ever in Israel ever existed. Uh, but but we treat them as though they are historical, I think, in a lot of ways. But so so
I think that,
Dante is also just treating them as being as if they were historical.
Well, let me throw this out. Perhaps Cassandra is missing because Cassandra supposedly was able to see the future. And Dante, for the sake of his argument, did not want to bring in an example of a diviner who could actually divine the future accurately.
No, I take it. Since some of you have read the Inferno and the other sections of the Divine Comedy, is because Cassandra never makes an appearance in any of Dante's poem here.
I don't recall.
Okay,
I don't think she does.
all right.
It's hard to make the cut beyond the Inferno unless you're a Christian. Now there are exceptions. Trajan is in paradise and so forth, but beyond once you start climbing the mountain of purgatory, it becomes increasingly difficult to get included in the cast of characters if you are not Christian.
Okay.
So here's another comment too, and I mean we've talked about this with other chapters, right? Cultural change has certainly made us take a different sort of look at some of Dante's judgments, shall we say. So, for instance, Paolo and Francesca. There was something else I was thinking of, which we don't take too hard today, but here, with the soothsayers, right? Most people today would see it as fairly harmless. So, for instance, I don't read horoscopes, but some people do. Never had the tarot cards served up to me, but some people go for them. And nobody gets too excited, I think it's seen as sort of a harmless pastime now. It certainly doesn't get you consigned to hell. Oh, I know the other one I was going to say were the suicides.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah.
They take a different view today than Dante did.
Right.
I think it's just worth pointing out.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely some cultural changes here.
Right. Whereas John, in terms of the previous chapter and the next, previous canto and the next canto, where in the previous ones you have people buying and selling ecclesiastical offices, we're going, you know what? That's pretty cruddy to do that, especially when you got the keys to the church, bestowed on you by Peter. And then we come to Barratry, which is selling public offices, it's the same thing. We don't like corrupt politicians because they're generally messing with our money.
Right. Right.
And in those particular instances, we see current day examples.
You do.
Yeah.
And the damage that it's done. Whereas when it comes to soothsaying and tarot reading, we just kind of go, well, those people are kind of kooky.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Give 'em a hard
Exactly.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's not, I mean, if you're on a blind date and somebody says, what's your sign? You're not walking away
Yeah, yeah.
necessarily.
Well, maybe these, and maybe our parsing of the forthcoming sections and try. What did you call them? The
Tercet.
tercets? Okay. Maybe that'll become clear. I would imagine. I would think though that he doesn't seem to get on any big soapbox about this. Maybe as if there was somebody in his own time who had so falsely or somehow misled the people in Florence or people from the political events of his time into some grave disaster, something like that, or somebody even his a couple centuries more of his what's more recent history at his time. So maybe that'll be made clear in these other tercets that we'll read here.
Here's something else I maybe people could help me with. So for the most part, Dante lets the punishments speak for themselves. He doesn't editorialize a lot. He lets the punishments speak for themselves.
Right, yeah.
Now here he's unhappy. He doesn't. He feels sympathy for the people who are being punished, and he gets told off. Could you remind me where's the situation where he actually gets angry?
That was with the Pope.
That was just the last chapter, wasn't it?
So it was, Lois. It was with the Simone. I said,
Simony.
okay,
It was
fair
Simony.
enough. Fair enough.
Simonizers.
Yeah.
One other thought on Cassandra. He may simply have felt that she suffered enough, and his readers would know it. At the sack of Troy, she's clinging to a statue of Athena or Minerva in Latin, and she's pulled away by a Greek warrior and raped. And then she's brought back by Agamemnon as a concubine to Mycenae, where Agamemnon's wife, Clytemnestra, kills both Agamemnon and Cassandra. So I think she suffered so much that putting her in here might just seem to be kicking somebody who's down.
Yeah, John, and on top of that's such a good point. Thank you. And I would just add as a footnote to that as well, when she is attempting to convince people of what's going to happen in the future, it's not because she's trying to feather her own nest or gain profit by it. She's warning them for the good of the community. So motive may play a factor here as well.
Now, in Berlioz's opera Les Troyens, none of that happens. She persuades a mass of Trojan women to commit suicide rather than to let themselves be captured by the Greeks. And it's one of the most stunning scenes I know of in opera. But since the opera never gets performed, nobody sees it.
It's endless, isn't it? Like 6 hours?
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody. It was never.
But I've seen it in 2 parts. They do it in 2 parts.
Yeah, some do. The Met has done it, but not very often.
Yeah, I saw it once at the Met maybe 20 years ago.
With Jesse Norman.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's a film one I saw. It's fabulous. But anyway, but that's a distraction.
But a good one. Thank you.
I was the last one to read, and I finished off at 111, I think.
I think Dave
finished off at, and you finished off at 111?
No, Dave then resumed again at 100,
Yeah.
And we were going through that, and we worked down to, I forget where you left off now, Dave.
I did. I think you would start at 115. But before I do, a question for Cleveland John, and that is, who was it who put the idea in Agamemnon's head to sacrifice Iphigenia?
That was the other prophet who's mentioned here, Calchas.
Oh, it was Calchas. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So I am the next reader after Dave Little, is that correct?
Or, sir.
Yes.
And I start on line 115.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The next. Who is so slender in the flank was Michael Scott, who of a variety of magical illusions knew the game. Behold, Guido Bonatti. Behold, Asdente, who now unto his leather and his thread would fain have struck, but he too late repents. Behold the wretched ones who left the needle, the spool, and the rock and made them fortune tellers. They wrought their magic spells with herb and image. Then I could go on, but I think I'll stop there.
Yeah. So I'm getting the idea that the thread and the needle are sort of the tools of soothsayers or diviners. Those are tools. It's the spool and the rock, and made them fortune tellers. And somehow is that the idea of the weaving the thread of fate or something like that?
Or was it that they were sowers, like, and then they left that trade to become soothsayers, John?
Okay. Yeah, I was getting that, but I thought that in a way there was maybe I was just interpreting that as being leaving. Was that were thread, needle, and spool and rock and so forth? Are those also associated with soothsayers or diviners? I was thinking, like the three Norns, spinning. There's sort of a spinning thing of they're threading together. They're maybe using a thread, or there's some sort of thread of of fate. Maybe I'm just using over exercising my imagination here.
No, I think it's a good analogy, John. I think it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let me read this little thing about Michael Scott from Hollander.
Okay. Yes.
Michael Scott was indeed a Scotsman, lived 1175 to 1235, studied at Oxford and Paris, eventually joining the court of Frederick II at Palermo. For Frederick, he translated some of Aristotle from Arabic, a language he had studied in Spain. He himself wrote mainly on the occult sciences, alchemy, astrology, and achieved a large European following. And that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So I'm getting increasingly stuck on the idea that the problem with these people is indeed that they are attempting to usurp the prerogatives of God himself. And that they're not being directed by God in their soothsaying.
Yeah. And
therefore, by definition, it is false and misleading.
Well, in a sense, it just occurred to me that in a way he's kind of lumping them or grouping them as really a bunch of con artists, and they are like this Michael Scott. It recalls and conjures in my mind the whole the subsequent thing we have today. people who follow, well, all kinds of different, weird and far out ideas, from Madame Blavatsky, and the world of the occult is, and people who are in the know, are people who they claim some kind of special insights. And whether some people follow, like you mentioned, Dave, tarot cards, or some people do other things, but some people follow, say they follow these occult readings, and they have huge followings of people they claim to be able to see the future or interpret events or interpret channel spirits or whatever. Some of those are well, I guess if you talk to some people, they're all con artists, and maybe he's likening Dante's likening these to a bunch of these manipulators, con artists.
Yeah, I think it goes even deeper than that to a certain extent.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
if we look at things like Bitcoin,
okay, yeah,
and we look at AI,
mm-hmm.
to me, these are all soothsayer activities.
Yes.
These are people taking an idea and predicting the future.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they're not tarot card readers or astrologers, etc., they are attempting to read the technological tea leaves, if you will, and to predict the future and to persuade people to act in certain ways.
Mm. Mm.
Would you include economists on your list?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, how about political pollsters?
There you go. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think any attempt to predict the future, raises questions.
And yet, we kind of all have to try to do it to survive, correct?
I would think that quote, a person who cleaves solely to the Dantean image of God would restrict their predictions to only God-directed predictions, which of course is problematic in itself.
Yeah. Well, we have, I guess, there's, I guess the difference between predictions would be questions of the certainty, and we get into the, modern econometrics or economists or finance for that matter. The Bitcoin, I'm not quite sure even what the theory of that all is, but it seems to me that they do, I think, qualify their predictions as being, within, like, as they do with like polls, with a certain range of certainty or something like that. They'll say, well, it's not certain, but we'll give a range of probabilities that it's going to be right on. Of course, I think we know, like, the polls have been notoriously off by much more than the couple of degrees of certitude that they disqualify, that they disclaim. But I just they at least avoid that thing of saying for sure that these are things for sure. But you make a good point with that, because I'm not sure that people really understand that. And if you give it something like with statistical ranges like that, many people simply don't understand statistics, and they'll take these predictions as being the gospel truth.
As being gospel, exactly, and they'll express it. They'll take the predictions as being gospel.
Yeah.
As coming from God. That's what gospel means, coming from God.
God, yes, indeed. Yeah.
Or computer generated information when we don't have access to the program that generated it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to use a maybe trivial example, but for a while, computer rankings contributed to determining which college football team would play in the championships. But the program, you can program that to wait, whatever you want to wait, and without knowing what the computer program was, it was
Right.
meaningless.
Right.
But it
Yeah.
was just nobody ever got beyond computer generated things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and,
Right.
and I'm
It's
sure
very
there were
opaque.
serious. I'm sure there have been legal cases with much more serious
Well,
issues.
I think, from what I learned about how gerrymandering works, nobody really knows. Nobody, it really depends on the computer that you see. The people who create the maps for legislative redistricting rely upon all kinds of different unknowns, assumptions, or whatever, and information about voter information, and they very easily can design whatever who's ever directing this seen or unseen hand wants to. And so it's a matter of but people treat it as like, well, this is some sort of a neutral group that's created these maps. I think that's
Right.
another example.
These are all honorable men who have
Well,
created.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think this does get us into very sticky territory.
It does.
And it does encounter a much wider group than we normally associate with soothsaying,
Mm-hmm.
because it's really any group that is making predictions about the future
Mm-hmm.
and acting upon those predictions, or encouraging other people to act upon those predictions, are, let's just say, eligible members of this particular bulge.
I'll accept that. And by the way, who is Guido Bonatti and Astante now? Do we have some information, Mr. Holland?
Yeah, I have something here. Bonatti was a tiler by trade. He seems to have acted as a domestic astrologer to Guido da Montefeltro. It is said to have been by his aid that the latter won his decisive victory over the French papal forces. Bonatti wrote a work on astrology.
Oh.
And this other guy, Benvenuto, nicknamed Asdente, which translates to toothless, he was a shoemaker of Parma who was famed as a prophet and soothsayer during the latter half of the 13th century. He is referred to as Il Calzolaio di Parma. Is that a shoemaker? Yeah. As in the instance of an individual who would be noble if notoriety constituted nobility.
Take that.
Wow. So those are some of the contemporary examples of prognosticators or forecasters, diviners and maybe those are the real target of his Dante's his message here. If he has a message, he's comparing them to these older soothsayers who have ended up in hell, and here they are now with them. They're all together.
I wish someone had some good notes on lines 121 to 123.
Yeah, I don't have anything in my notes here.
I don't either.
But it
Behold
is.
the wretched ones who left the needle, the spool, and the rock, and made them fortune. So I guess that this is the implication. It's just like that shoemaker. What was it? A shoemaker who became a soothsayer.
Right.
And
That's Dante, the toothless one.
Cobbler. Let's see, there was a cobbler and a tailor. I think that there's something cobblers and tailors. I find this interesting, and I'm just speculating that I would think that if one were a tailor or a shoemaker, which are pretty boring, repetitive occupations that
Well-
leave plenty of time and space to speculate. I wonder if there was a tendency among those sorts of tradespeople to get into the soothsaying business and to have revelations, just because they spent so much boring time doing repetitive.
Yeah, telling each other stories.
Oh.
I have an interesting note that I'm seeing when I look at this. The word about the wretched people in the Italian, it's le triste, which is feminine.
I have witch wives, Lois, is my translation.
Yeah, so mine says wretched women, but when I look at the Italian, it says look at le triste, which would be plural female. So it's women, it's not just people. So it's women who stopped their womanly work of needlework and decided to take up fortune telling.
Witches.
Yeah.
Just help me out here again. What was Guy Bonatti's occupation?
Let me go back.
We don't.
Tyler.
He was a tiler. I assume that means he's making tiles, but I don't know.
Tyler. Okay, so here's my question.
But you
Are
know,
we looking-
tiling is also putting things together,
Sure.
taking pieces and making.
Yeah, you sure it's not Taylor?
No, mine says Tyler.
Tyler, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we
What is
looking at a bit of class snobbiness on the part of Dante here?
Could
You mean all of these tasks, all of these low-level jobs?
Well,
be.
why does he say for what's it with as Dante, the toothless one, he'd wish that he'd stuck to his shoemaking.
Shoemaking, yeah.
Because we don't get that, I don't think, with the other ones. But here, I'm wondering if he's thinking these guys have no business, trying to rise above their station. I wonder.
Well,
the
that
other
would be true. That would be true if he had given us some examples of higher class soothsayers who he did not consider to be doing that. So I mean, does Dante make any exceptions for any of the soothsayers, or are all attempts to tell the future without the direct guidance of God, punishable sins, regardless of class stature?
Good point. It's a good point. No, I guess what I was wondering about was the dig. You're right. I am in vehement agreement with you, Duncan. But he makes a point of saying this guy should have stuck to his shoemaking, and he doesn't with these other people. And I just wonder if it's a class dig there.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, how about calls the guy os dente,
Toothless.
which I take personally these days.
Yeah, for sure.
Isn't that an old phrase, though? A cobbler should stick to his last.
Oh,
I don't know how old it is, but
let me look.
Should
That's
stick to his last.
Last, LAST. That's
Yeah.
the model for the shoe.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've just looked it up here, John. Let the cobbler stick to his last. There it is. One should do what one is familiar with, experienced in, or skilled at, rather than trying something different and risking failure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm familiar with that saying.
Well, this gets really, if you know anything about English history and you know about that period of time when England was plagued with religious revelation.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, it's we're still suffering from that these days. I mean, part of our history is going back to that period of time of incredible spiritual and civil strife within England,
This
of
is
which the Civil War was only one manifestation.
you're talking about the English Civil War.
Talk about the English Civil War.
Oh, okay. 17th century.
Yeah, but that's
17th
17th century.
Late 17th century. But once again, there was all these people who with revelations,
Okay.
Right.
Gutenberg and Boehm and all kinds of people we've never even heard of. George Fox, and they all had revelations and they were all making predictions about the future. And it really caused a lot of strife in England, which I think still goes on today. I mean,
Well, we do. We have people talking about the rapture and things like that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We still have all that going on, and these are basically all people who are going beyond the written scripture by far.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's that thing of that aspect of it. I guess, and that was also the age of witch burning too, wasn't it?
That was a little, well, yeah, actually,
I don't know if it's related, but it's a concurrent kind of, those are some things going on in colonial America, I'm thinking.
well, I read one argument that was saying that actually our American Civil War was a direct result of groups of people who moved from England. That we had the Pilgrims, who are our primary example, in the North, establishing a certain type of culture and a certain way of looking at the world. And we had the more aristocratic, cavalier type culture that moved to the South. And that much of Southern culture actually derives from the English cavalier culture.
The difference between John Adams and Jefferson.
Yeah, that would be certainly an.
Yeah, I saw your Facebook post referring to that, Duncan. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. I'm trying not to make too much of it. There's certainly some criticisms of it.
Yeah.
But coming back to our canto at hand, I think the essence of it is the attempt to predict the future beyond what is, quote, ours as Christians to do.
Well, then, and yeah, I guess, taking that then to what Dante's doing here, he's carefully walking around predicting. Well, in a way, he is making some sort of prophecy, isn't he? I suppose, about people who end up in hell. I mean, he's walking on the edge there in a way. It seems to me.
Yeah.
He's making judgments, I think, about people, and maybe he feels that.
I think that he's to a certain extent he's training his eye on himself as well.
Oh, there you go. Okay, fair. That's a good.
He's not letting himself escape from this scrutiny.
Right. Yeah.
So John from Cleveland sent me down a wormhole, and if you want to check the chat, I followed up on what he said. I never heard the expression before. This is awesome, John.
Oh, the last. Let's stick to his last.
Yeah.
And
I
love somewhere.
I love the origin of the story too, which I put in the chat as well.
Well, there's a female version of that. She should stick to her man.
All right. Yeah.
Knitting.
Yeah.
There's also the athletic one, shut up and dribble.
Yeah. Up here we've got one called a Fisher cut bait. I don't know if that's North American wide or not.
Yeah. No, we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
Fisher cut
yeah.
bait.
You've heard it? Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so behold the wretched ones who left the needle. Behold the wretched ones who left the needle, the spool, and rock. I wonder what rock refers
I don't
to.
know what the rock is. Um, Mine says needle, spool, and spindle.
Okay.
I've got shuttle, but close.
Yeah, because the rock is not in the Italian. There's no word I recognize as rock in the Italian.
Who cast away needle, spindle, and shuttle. That's what I have.
Mhm. And once again, notice these are all repetitive tasks.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
These are all, gathering. What's that expression about gathering your wool? When you have I think it's a couple women together, and one is holding their hand out like so, and the other wrapping the wool around as they make. So once again, we have a occupation that doesn't demand a lot of thinking in itself, but takes time and is very repetitive. And made them, okay, the spool and the rock, and made them fortune tellers. They wrought their magic spells with herb and image.
Hmm.
This all sounds like the classic image of witches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble.
Mm-hmm. Once again, stirring the pot.
Mhm.
So can we just go back on line 21, 121? I said my translation is witch wives. Lois, you've got something different, feminine
I have
nonetheless.
I have wretched women,
Okay.
but the actual Italian is le triste, the sad
Sad
one.
ones.
Yeah, triste en français. Triste is sad. That's
It's the
right.
same
Yeah.
word. So this is
Yeah.
the sad women.
Yeah.
Sad, melancholic.
So what I've got is the witch wives, miserable women who
Hmm.
Lasciare il lago. We have a spuola, I guess it's a spool, and el fuso.
look at the bright side, John. He's not out chasing squirrels. And then the last slide I've got with Mommet. So they cast away needle, spindle, and shuttle for skill with mommets and filters. Filters are like potions, I think, but mommets I had to look it up. Like
Filter with a
puppets.
pH. Filter with a pH.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
I was
it's like a
looking,
magic potion.
yeah.
looking at,
But I had to look up mommets.
okay.
I
I
don't
was
know.
looking up just, I'm trying to use my single screen here, double screening it somehow. I don't see it. Charles Singleton talks about some of these lines here. He says the reference on con herbe, the references to juices or herbs with which the sorceresses made magic potions. Benvenuto notes that at Venice, such filters, spelled Philters, were called herberare e conimago, with waxen images which were stuck full of needles or burned in order to produce the desired effect, usually death, in the imaged person. Sort of like voodoo dolls.
Yeah.
And you like that callback to the needle.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. That makes sense now. Thanks. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Just copy that down. Yeah. Okay.
I think the expression that I was trying to remember earlier was she should stick to her knitting.
Oh,
Right.
that's,
Right. So if we move on, we come to this, like, these very puzzling
Yes.
last two verses where deep within the bowels of the earth, they can see the position of the moon.
Yes, but but not from where they're sitting. It's from a different location, according to my notes.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
like
I didn't get
it's
that.
like if you were in Jerusalem or something.
yeah, it's exactly. It says here, this is Singleton again. The moon, and he refers to Cain and his thorns, and he refers to a note here, is said to hold the confines of both the hemispheres, that is, the hemisphere that has Jerusalem as its center, and the hemispheres of water, and to touch the, quote, waves below Seville, end quote, and setting in the west, i.e., for an observer ideally stationed at Jerusalem. So that seems to be the source of that. See if I can't.
And do all of you have the translation for the word that they're using Cain, Cain, like in Cain and Abel?
Yes.
Yeah, he's the man in the moon.
Yeah. And that took a lot of checking on. But the word before it, sobilia caino, do we know what sobilia is in medieval Tuscan? Sobilia caino?
Sibylla is Seville.
Seville.
Oh, okay, thank you. So it's the civilian man on the moon.
So is this like if you're in a nuclear submarine today and it's like obviously you can't see outside, but you know that it's noon up above, or you know that the sun is setting because of where the time is. You don't actually see it, but you know that that's what's happening. Is that what the equivalent is here?
Well, I was going to read this. Let me throw this in here. I was just going to continue on this commentary by Charles Singleton.
Okay.
He quotes somebody named E. Moore, I guess another commentator of the Inferno, states that the time indicated here by moonset is approximately 6 a.m. Moore points out that although Dante naturally records the beginning of a new day in the pilgrimage, the poet seems to avoid mentioning the sun in the Inferno, preferring, for example, here to register the new day in terms of moonset rather than sunrise. He says the latest time reference at Inferno 11 verses 113-14, where it is said to be about 2 hours before sunrise or 4 a.m. So this is a reference to the time that is in Dante's time in the Inferno here. Oh, and I guess then he goes on. This is another thing here. This Cain is the eldest son of Adam and Eve, and murder of his brother Abel is here mentioned in connection with the old popular belief that the man in the moon was Cain with a bundle of thorns. According to an tradition, Cain attempted to excuse himself for the murder of Abel and was condemned by God to be confined to the moon. Thus, Cain and his thorns here indicate the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So,
come now, for hold the confines of both the atmosphere and the world. Okay, so basically on this from lines 24 to 26, we have Virgil saying, okay, come on, Dante, we've spent enough time in this place.
Yeah,
And we got to move along.
exactly.
And under Seville touches the ocean wave, Cain and the thorn. And yesternight the moon was round already. So full moon, right?
Hmm.
I think so, yeah.
Let's remember well, it did not harm thee. Huh. That
What's that?
should,
Yeah, that is, it helped you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't get the point of that. The
Is
moon
it-
the moon did you no harm at any time in the deep wood? I'm at a loss. I don't know what that's telling me.
So is it, somebody suggested, Lois, not I promise, that it was in really meaning the opposite, that the moon helped you? That, you say, well, it did not harm you, understating
Yeah.
the fact that it helped you? I think it's called litotes, but I should check
Huh.
that.
So he's saying, remember the last night with the moons, you were okay.
this may be going back to the old thing that you do not want to expose yourself. He's telling Dante, hey, it's time to move along. Look what's going
Right.
on in the
Right.
heavens.
He's referring to the moon.
Don't worry about it being, a full type moon. It didn't hurt you before. It's not going to hurt you this time.
Okay,
So
okay.
I think that's all that it's saying here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yesternight the moon was round already, and yesternight was actually, I believe, when he was lost in the wood.
Yeah.
Thou shouldst remember well, it did not harm thee. Scared the shit out of you, but it really didn't hurt you.
Right.
From time to time within the forest deep. Thus spake he to me, and we walked the while.
It's sort of it's a throwaway, really.
Yeah.
Not a horse, but a throwaway.
Oh, okay.
Love how you slipped that in.
Well, that was
It's just interesting that they're telling time by the position of the moon when they're underground.
So there was an earlier point where he talked about the stars,
Right.
same way.
Yeah.
And he mentioned a couple of constellations,
Yeah. Yes. That's a good point. I'd forgotten about that. Right.
and it was again saying we got to get moving.
Right.
Yeah, I think Virgil has a timetable. I'm not sure Dante's aware of what the timetable is, but Virgil is aware. And of course, the timetable is that they got to get to paradise by Easter morning.
Right. So there is a sense of giddy up, giddy up. That's for sure.
We just have to get up. We have certain things have to happen at certain times because it's over the Easter weekend that all this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And even us as readers, we lose that during the reading of the Commedia. We forget that there is a time constraint.
Hmm.
Is there also a sense that Dante shares, I guess, with all of us, the tendency to linger when you come upon something new and different and often horrible? I think of people slowing down to look at a car accident.
Uh-huh.
And Virgil's got to be the giddy up guy. No, you can't.
Hmm.
This is not, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
this is not violence, pornography, or anything like that. You take a look, we'll tell you what's happening, but then we move on.
Hmm.
I think Virgil is very well aware of what the time frame is going
Yeah.
to be.
Right.
And Dante's not. That Dante is just kind of following Virgil along.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for all of us, the tendency would be to linger. I mean, unless something's so horrible you want to move on. I mean, this is very, very different.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure I would lollygag the whole way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd be right beside you. You'd be probably trying to drag me along, Duncan.
Very interesting, though. I mean, it seems like we very suddenly popped up out of this canto.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, oh my God, it's the end of this canto.
Are we going to go back through this again and read this all through again, or?
Let's see, we could read the English. Actually, we could read the English. That would be a good way to end up today's
Yeah.
session. Go back and read the English from beginning to end, and then say goodbye to each other.
Okay.
Okay, whose
So,
turn is, who's reading?
uh,
I think
whoever.
I think it is the rose among the thorns. Is it not?
Well, if
Oh,
Duncan was the last one to read, I guess it's my turn. If I,
Oh, it
Yeah,
is. I'm sorry.
it's-
Sorry.
It'll be
Then
my
John.
turn. I start over then, start at the beginning and begin this reading.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and just start
All right.
at line.
Okay, so we've done now, we finished Canto 20, but now begin at the beginning again at Canto 20. Okay,
That's correct.
all right.
Mhm.
The fourth Bolgia, soothsayers, Amphiaraus, Tiresias, Aaron's, Manto, Eriphilus, Michael Scott, Guido Bonatti, and Astante. Virgil reproaches Dante's pity, Mantua's foundation. Okay. Of a new pain behoved me to make verses and give material to the 20th canto of the first song, which is of the submerged. I was already thoroughly disposed to peer down into the uncovered depth which bathed itself with tears of agony. And people saw I through the circular valley, silent and weeping, coming at the pace which in this world the litanies assume. As lower down my sight descended on them, wondrously each one seemed to be distorted from chin to the beginning of the chest. For towards the reins the countenance was turned, and backward it behoved them to advance, as to look forward had been taken from them. Perchance, indeed, by violence of palsy, someone had been thus wholly turned awry, but I ne'er saw it, nor believed it can be. As God may let thee, reader, gather fruit from this thy reading, think now for thyself, how could I ever keep my face unmoistened, when our own image near me I beheld, distorted so, the weeping of the eyes along the fissure bathed the hinder parts. So, John, do you want to take over?
Truly I wept, leaning upon a peak of the hard crag, so that my escort said, to me art thou too of the other fools? Here pity lives when it is wholly dead. Who is a greater reprobate than he who feels compassion at the doom divine? Lift up thy head and see for whom opened the earth before the Thebans' eyes. Wherefore they all cried, whither rushest thou, Amphiaraus? Why dost leave the war? And downward ceased he not to fall amain, as far as Minos, who lays hold on all. See, he has made a bosom of his shoulders, because he wished to see too far before him. Behind he looks, and backward goes his way. Behold Tiresias, who his semblance changed, when from a male a female he became, his members being all of them transformed, and afterwards was forced to strike once more the two entangled serpents with his rod, that he could have again his manly plumes. Next, please.
He who puts his back to that one's belly is Aaron's. In the hills of Ludi, where the Cararesi, who shelter in the valley, work the earth, he lived inside a cave in that white marble from which he could observe the sea and stars in a wide and boundless prospect. And that female whose backward flowing tresses fall upon her breast, so they are hidden, and has her hairy parts on that same side, was Manto, who searched through many lands before she settled in a place where I was born. For just a moment, hear me out on this. Next.
I know it's my turn. Sorry. And after, just thinking about what you read here. Okay. And after her father passed beyond life's pale, when Bacchus' city lay in bondage thralled, long years she wandered uphill and down dale, high in fair Italy, where Almaen's walled by the Alps above the Tyrol, lies in dreams at the mountain's foot a lake, Banaco called. For the water here of over 1,000 streams meseems that lave Mount Apennine, running apace twixt Garda and Val Comino- Com- Com-
Kobeloka.
Cominoca, thank you, spreads and brims to a mirror. And there, in the midst of it, lies a place that the Bishop of Verona and those of Trent and Brescia, if they pass that way, might bless. Peschiera sits at the circling shore's descent against Bergames and Brescians built for cover, a goodly keep. There all the effluent Benaco's bosom cannot hold spills over, slipping and lipping down and sliding so through verdant meads, a river and a rover. Benaco called no more, but Mincio, from where the water first sets head to run down to Guverno, where it joins the Po. Duncan?
Not far it runs before it finds a plain in which it spreads itself and makes it marshy, and oft is wont in summer to be sickly. Passing that way, the virgin pitiless, land in the middle of the fen decried, untilled and naked of inhabitants. There to escape all human intercourse, she with her servants stayed, her arts to practice and lived, and left her empty body there. The men thereafter who were scattered round collected in that place, which was made strong by the lagoon it had on every side. They built their city over those dead bones, and after her who first the place selected, Mantua named it, without other omen. Its people once within more crowded were, ere the stupidity of Casalodi from Pinamonte had received a seat. Next reader, please.
Well, I don't know. Lois, did you read?
I did.
Oh, you did. Okay. Well, then I go. Okay. Its people once within more crowded were, ere the stupidity of Casalodi from Pinamonte had received a seat. Therefore I caution thee, if e'er thou hearest originate my city otherwise, no falsehood may the verity defraud. And I, my master, thy discourses are to me so certain, and so take my faith, that unto me the rest would be spent coals. But tell me of the people who are passing, if any one noteworthy thou beholdest, for only unto that my mind reverts. Then said he to me, he from the cheek thrust out his beard upon his swarthy shoulders was, at the time when Greece was void of males, so that there scarce remained one in the cradle, an augur, and with Calchas gave the moment, and Aulus, when to sever the first cable. Eriphilus his name was, and so sings my lofty tragedy in some part or other. That knowest thou well, who knowest the whole of it. Next, please.
The next who is so slender in the flanks was Michael Scott, who of a verity of magical illusions knew the game. Behold Guido Bonatti, behold Osdente, who now unto his leather and his thread would fain have stuck, but he too late repents. Behold the wretched ones who left the needle, the spool and rock, and made them fortune tellers. They wrought their magic spells with herb and image. But come now, for already holds the confines of both the hemispheres, and under Seville touches the ocean wave, Cain and the thorns. And yesternight the moon was round already. Thou shouldst remember well it did not harm thee from time to time within the forest deep. Thus spake he to me, and we walked the while.
Well, we should wrap up the day. But I do want to mention this whole that brought up that thing again of looking at the skies from a hole. It did that in the beginning and it did that in the end.
Looking at the skies from a hole, do you mean as a hole as it?
Being in a crevasse and looking at the sky.
Oh, okay. So like you're looking outside of a cone or something like that. You're looking up to he's looking at the sky.
He's looking at the sky, but he has a limited, I mean, there's two good things about looking at the sky from a hole.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's dark in the hole, so you can actually see the sky, even if
Yes.
it's daytime there.
Right,
But on the other hand, your vision is limited.
right. Yeah, yeah.
And this whole thing about being turned around,
Mm-hmm.
of having the face facing backwards.
Mm. Oh,
So even so they cannot see properly because of course they're looking behind themselves,
right. Yeah,
but we're seeing the future.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway, those are just thoughts.
yeah. Yeah.
As we read through this, I thought, my God, there's so much more to discuss here. But
Wow.
okay. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank
All
you.
right.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
See you guys
See you
tomorrow.
See you next week.
I'll see you.
Bye.
I'll see the Ulysses crowd tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.